today's video, I'm having a look at Tesla and vaccines across the globe. Hello and welcome to another Acysecurities Hot Topics video. My name is Alistair Schultz and I'm going to be a host through today's trading journey. The first thing I'm looking at today is really just a bit of a notification after months and months and months of speculation on whether Tesla would be able to enter the S&P 500, only to be let down not that long ago. They are finally getting their chance. On the 21st of December this year, they will be entering the S&P 500 with a market cap of $367 billion, which will make them the largest new member of the S&P 500 basically ever. Now, there is more to come about this scenario. We know that they are definitely going to be entered and allowed to be a part of that prestigious club. But of course, the stock price has already risen nearly 9.8% just on the fact that they've been told they're going to be entering. And I expect to see that happening a little bit more over the coming months. Of course, we can't always forget about the idea of what Elon Musk is doing around the globe. So keep an eye on some of these benefits that he might find for the joining of the S&P 500 club. It does mean he will likely see more investment coming through for him just because he enters into it. Now, looking at some vaccine news today, Moderna Incorporated have announced that their vaccine is able to fight off the coronavirus with a 94.5% rate of working. Now, if this is one of many that we've seen in the last couple of weeks, we've already heard from Pfizer, we've heard from AstraZeneca, Moderna is now the next one. And I've been having a think about how impactful perhaps some of these vaccines are. We've obviously already spoken about before the idea what might happen in terms of distribution, because that is one of the main concerns. So I've actually done a bit of a table for us here comparing Pfizer's vaccine to Moderna's vaccine and what the access in Australia might look like, which might be a pretty good comparable for the rest of the world as well. Obviously, with Australia being so far away from pretty much every other country, it does make it a little bit more difficult or challenging to get things delivered. Now, in Pfizer's case, we already have a deal here in Australia with them for 10 million doses expected to be delivered sometime early to mid next year in 2021. But we don't have that with Moderna. Of course, we could still potentially go through the COVAX collaboration agreement and get it that way instead. But regardless of that, that's just the Australian situation. Thinking about it from a global perspective, how hard is this, either one of these drugs, to transport? Now, in the Pfizer case, it requires minus 70 degrees Celsius to actually use for transportation, which means your transportation costs go up. It's very easy to get spoilage. And of course, it means it's required to actually get to the place for transport in the first place. So putting it on a container ship where things can go wrong is probably not advisable, but would likely end up happening. Whereas in the Moderna instance, it's up to minus 20 degrees Celsius and it can hold for up to 6 months. There's been no information yet on how long the Pfizer vaccine might be able to actually stay in cold storage for. Regardless, we're also seeing a little bit of difference in the price points. Moderna is a little bit more expensive at $32 to $37 per dose. It still requires 2 injections, though it is spread out a little bit more, which means you're probably looking at close to $80 for your entire vaccination process. And there's still no evidence to suggest how long the vaccine might actually be able to help. Of course, Pfizer does have it a little bit cheaper price at $19.50 per dose. You still require 2 doses regardless of how it goes, but the effectiveness rate is really marginal in where it's going. We've got one at 90%, one at 94.5% effectiveness. So keeping an eye on how that might go. They both have side effects and are likely to give you some form of cold or flu symptoms in the lead up, much like most other vaccines that are on the available market for a variety of other illnesses. Now, where might we go when it comes to this? Well, in Australia here, it's likely going to see us get the Pfizer cases because we've already got a commitment to do that. But Moderna seems to be, in my eyes, probably the better one to go. Yes, it's a fraction more expensive, but the storage costs are likely to be cheaper. So just because it costs $19.50 per dose doesn't mean that by the time it gets to us, it's going to be $19.50 per dose, particularly given that how much colder it needs to be for its transportation and the unknown time until spoilage. So my bet is that Moderna is probably going to be the better way to go. We are obviously going to see more. There's going to be constant development on this. When it gets to Australia or when it gets to your nation, feel free to let me know. I'd like to hear your thoughts about it as well. Now, moving on from the vaccine scenarios, of course, we've seen the ASX, we've seen stock markets, we've seen pretty much everywhere around the globe respond quite positively to this news. Now that we've got 2 different drugs to choose from, potentially even 3, Moderna has had an increase of nearly 10% in their stock price. And of course, we've seen this rotation from being tech stocks and being, safe haven, I suppose, if you will, when it comes to stock picks throughout the year. Those ones that have been growth stocks have had a little bit of a change up. So we've actually seen the NASDAQ come down about 0.8%, whilst we've seen some of those old cyclical positions starting to ramp up again. And that's no different this morning. I've woken up this morning and found the same sort of news is coming on. It's just getting a little bit bigger and bigger and bigger. So it'll be interesting to see how long this rotation lasts, if it does last. And of course, if it does last, then it'd be good to see that some of these underweight or low, what we consider to be value stocks, start to climb up. So I would be suggesting to have a look at your energy sectors, your housing sectors, and of course, keep an eye on agricultural with the new RCEP agreement that's set for the Asia Pacific region. Now, moving on from all of that, the ASX is open again. It has been open all day today. We have had a couple of tweets go out throughout the day. Plus my morning update, I did give you guys a bit of an information to say, yes, it is going to be open at 10 a.m. So prices have jumped up on open. Yesterday, they had already jumped up. They were about 1.3% above just in about half an hour. But today, with all that's gone on, we've seen banking and resources start to really take off. And that's a nice thing to see. That's what I've been talking about when it comes to this rotation of value stocks versus the tech or your health or growth, if you will. Now, all the technology index here in Australia has gone down 0.6%, so it's not quite as bad as the NASDAQ, but it's still only just a little bit down. It's not a full percent yet. And the big grinners so far, they must be pretty happy. Like I was saying before, resources and banking have done well. So we've had ANZ Bank, Rio Tinto, BHP, all doing quite well as Woodside Petroleum. And there's a number of others in those categories that have seen some benefits today. So check them out, have a bit of a trade, see what you can find. You might find something a little bit obscure. Let me know your thoughts. I'm happy to hear what you might say. Now, in terms of the news ahead of today, we've also heard from something a little bit more unscheduled, which was Airbnb. They are coming up to their IPO and they have posted a positive return for this quarter so far. So that is nice to see on their revenue numbers ahead of an IPO as well. But outside of Airbnb, we've had monetary policy minutes today. We are hearing from OPEC meetings later tonight. Perhaps we'll get a bit of an idea on where they're looking to go with this next cut that is proposed. But I imagine they are likely going to delay it between 3 and 6 months as opposed to decreasing output of oil. We're also going to be seeing US retail sales in the US session later tonight. And very early in the Australian AM, we are going to be hearing from the Bank of England's Governor Bailey as well. So keep an eye on those if you're going to be trading them throughout the London and the US session. Now, if you would like to get in contact with me for whatever reason it may be, feel free to shoot me an email at talktoal@acy.com or get me on one of my other socials. I'm always on all of them pretty much all the time, considering modern day technology and phones as well. Now, if you would also, don't forget to like and subscribe to this video so you can get more great content from me and ACY Securities in the future. Have a great trading day ahead.